Okay, at this time, I would like to call the NCTD Performance Administration and Finance meeting for May 6, 2021 to order. Anthony, please call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. PAF Chair Edson.
Present.
PAF Vice Chair Jenkins.
Here.
PAF Member Desmond.
Here.
PAF Member Sanchez. That is the roll call, ma'am.
Okay. Did PAF member Sanchez say that she would be joining this meeting?
She did on the doodle poll, ma'am. I also sent her the calendar invite. I will be on the lookout for her in case she joins and promote her to a panelist.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Anthony. Anthony will now provide a safety brief and review evacuation procedures.
Yes, ma'am. For those here in the building, in the event of an emergency, I'll dial 911. In the event of an evacuation, please exit using the stairs. Do not use the elevator. Once cleared of the building, please do not re-enter unless told to do so by emergency personnel. We have fire alarms and fire extinguishers located on each floor of this building. We also have a portable defibrillator and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures. That concludes my safety brief, ma'am.
Thank you, Anthony. Do we have any public speakers today?
We do not.
Thank you. There is one item on our agenda today. Yoon Park Lynch, Chief Financial Officer, will review item number 1 for us, the draft proposed fiscal year 2022 operating budget. You're on, Yoon.
Good afternoon, PAF committee members. Today we'll be presenting the proposed draft budget for the fiscal year 2022. Just to provide some background of events that occurred before today's meeting, if everyone recalls, back on March 30th, the PAF committee received an update on the operating budget process, and some of the key issues that were discussed were the budget guidance and priorities, and also the budget timeline. Subsequently, on April 22nd, 2021, the board received a presentation from NCD staff regarding the proposed new rail operations and facilities maintenance contract, and the board supported that business model. I wanted to provide some, before we go through the actual financial numbers, wanted to provide some the significant assumptions that were used for both revenue and expenses to develop our fiscal year 2022 budget. To start with is our fair revenue. Our fair revenue is calculation is driven by our service plan, which includes the ridership forecast for the upcoming fiscal year and for the next 5 and 10 years. Within the service implementation plan, there are assumptions built within the model on where staff is best estimate or where ridership could potentially be in the upcoming year. So for our budget, we have made assumptions that for the first half of fiscal year 2022, we'll have approximately a 60% level ridership from FY 2019, meaning that we will still be low in ridership, but better than where we are today in fiscal year 2021. Same thing as for the second half, we believe that there could be some betterment in ridership numbers as the COVID-19 effects start winding down. And we estimated that that will be about 75% of where we were back in fiscal year 2019. It is important to note that within our ridership forecast, it's contingent upon the occurrence of certain events. One of them is the full reopening of the California economy. Based on the governor's announcement, this date is estimated to be June 15, as long as we meet certain criteria. Within the ridership forecast, we have also factored in the restoration of coaster service beginning this month, as well as increasing our service frequencies in October of 2021.
I have a question on this page before we go to the next one.
Please ask your question.
Okay. The 60% and the 75% that we use, do we know what other transit agencies are predicting, or does it not matter? I'm just curious how we compare.
I've seen different projections, and I can get you the different projections at transit agencies. It's not necessarily relevant for anyone because each of them are going to be somewhat different. And I think the candid answer is until we can get to the reopening of the economy, plus doing some additional significant business and market analysis, we're not going to really have a good baseline. So this is the best projection that we could come up with the information that we have.
Okay. Yeah, I don't need to see the others. I'm just wondering if we looked at just to kind of see where we fell, if we were all about in the same ballpark or not. That's fine.
Thank you.
And before you start in, Yoon, I kind of had a similar question. I was curious as to, it says 60% pre-COVID 2019 levels. Is that broken down between bus and train, bus and rail?
Yes.
Or, okay. And,
Yes, so our service plan is broken by different modes of service.
okay, and can we share those with the board during the meeting? Because I think it's maybe an important thing to look at. What, we have a certain board member who doubts that anyone will ever ride the coaster again, but we don't want to set unreal expectations that we're looking at 60% recovery of 2019 levels in the first half of 2022 and have that not occur, but actually reach it or go beyond it with bus. So I think it's important to kind of have that breakdown, a little more breakdown.
So I'm going to go a little bit ahead of myself, but there is an actual slide in this presentation. It's on slide number 12. We can add in here, where FY19 looked like, but you can see here the different levels of recovery ridership that we are including within our budget document. So you can kind of see that we are still going to be significantly down from 20 and where we forecasted for FY21, but compared to where we were in FY21, which was a full year of COVID, we're saying that, we're going to have some recovery of about 65% compared to FY21. So again, it's all depending on the reopening of the economy. And we're looking at June 15 very closely to see, whether or not that's going to occur or not.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, kind of on Sharon's, following Sharon's question, yesterday I received an email from the airport authority that where their passenger volumes are projected to return to pre-pandemic levels in approximately 3 years. So I thought that was interesting, but I understand, Matt, where you're coming from, that every transit agency is different. For example, Losan only has a train. They don't have buses. They don't have a Sprinter. So, we're looking at multimodal. It is, I think, hard to benchmark with other agencies that don't have all of the same services that we have. So, sorry for interrupting you.
Okay. So going back to the some of the assumptions that are built within our operating budget for the upcoming year, we will see a reduction in the reimbursements that we receive from Amtrak related to the reduced scheduled trips. They are currently running at about a little less than 50% to where they were pre-pandemic. Just a quick reminder, the FTA formulas are published by the FTA, and those were presented by SANDAC back in the February board meeting. Something to note is that for fiscal year 2022, we will continue to make use of CARES Act and now what's called the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 in order to support our operating expenses and preventive maintenance costs. So for fiscal year 2022, we still have a carryover of approximately $24 million to be spent in the upcoming fiscal year. And then the remaining $22.3 million will come from the ARPA. The total estimated allocation from the ARPA funds to NCTD is approximately $60 million, which means that we will continue to have a carryover for fiscal year 2023 for approximately $38 million. Then other Significant sources for NCTD are state transit assistance, state of good repair, TDA, and Transnet. STA funds are derived from sales tax on gasoline and vehicle taxes and fees. The allocation for those fundings were published and provided by the State Controller's Office. And TDA and Transnet, both sources of revenue are derived from sales taxes. And the estimates were developed by SANDAG. Those were presented as well to SANDAG's board in their February 26th board meeting. And those estimates are incorporated in our projected budget for fiscal year 2022. So moving to expenses, some of the significant assumptions that are driving our expenditure for the upcoming fiscal year is that we will have an increase in staffing related to the in-house phase transition of the rail operations and maintenance activities. The coaster and sprinter staff for operations and maintenance will be onboarded about mid-calendar year 2022, and support staff from the finance, HR, and the offices of the executive directors, those will be brought in sometime in early and mid-fiscal year 2022. Something to note is that the insourcing of the facility staff related to the facilities contract, that's being deferred to fiscal year 2023 and are not reflected in the upcoming fiscal year budget. Effectively at the end of 2022, once we are transitioning, like I said, the rail operations and maintenance contract and support staff, the total FTEs will be increased by about 112. We'll have a total of 257.5, which is about 258 FTEs by the end of fiscal year 2022. Within our operating budget, we have also incorporated proposed salary increases for eligible staff to occur in September or October of this calendar year. Again, purchase transportation continues to be our major expense. If everyone recalls, the bus operations and maintenance is also contracted, and for the most part, the rail operations and maintenance contract will be in effect for the most part of fiscal year 2022 as well. Both contracts are subject to adjustments based on consumer price index or based on collective bargaining agreements. Under both scenarios, those increases cannot exceed 3%. For the rail contract, the adjustment will be 1.5%. For the facilities contract, we're still waiting for the CPI for the first half of 2021, so we can arrive to that adjustment. And for the bus contract, it's a combination of both the CPI adjustment as well as the contracted rates that are paid for the operators based on their collective bargaining agreements. Part of our budget, we also anticipate that there will be increases in the fuel prices. I don't think it's any secret that if, by filling your own personal vehicle, I've personally noticed the huge jump in fuel costs. There's a surge in demand related to, the more economic activity, more air travel, and that's causing pressure on the fuel prices. So for this fiscal year 2022, we have increased our budget for the cost of diesel, which is for the most part used for coaster and sprinter service, that it's going to be about 23% higher to where we were for fiscal year 2021 budget. And we also see that there is an increase in the cost of compressed natural gas, which is the fuel that feeds most of our Breeze fleet. And we also estimate that that cost is going to be higher by 9% compared to the fiscal year 2021 budget. Within the fuel costs, we are also incorporating the additional service frequencies planned for the coaster for this coming October. Another item that has a significant impact, and you will see in the some slides later on to our overall cost, is the significant increase in liability insurance cost. NCTD had to increase our rail liability coverage based on federally statutory required caps, and that has increased from $295 to $323 million. At the same time, we continue to see market conditions where there is really fewer underwriters providing coverage, which diminishes the pool of potential insurance providers, and this also has an impact on increasing those insurance costs. And in the table that it's illustrated here, it's pretty clear that from fiscal year 2018, our insurance costs have been increasing significantly. From fiscal year 2020 through fiscal year 2021, we had a jump of about 22%. And for this upcoming budget year, we are making a reserve for a potentially 57% increase in our insurance costs. Another item that's going to be new for this coming fiscal year is positive trend control. The positive trade control expenses for the last several years have been funded with capital grants, mostly from the Federal Railroad Administration and from the state level. Those funds are to be spent and encumbered by December 2022, and any expenditures no longer covered by that grant are going to be operating moving forward. For fiscal 2022, we estimate a total of about $1.4 million of operating expenses. And just something to know, this will be, and this is just for half a fiscal year. So in the next cycle for fiscal year 2023, it's probably going to be somewhere between $3 to $3.5 million. And that should be reflected in our 5-year plan. Other assumptions for this coming fiscal year is the increased professional services. The district is planning to make significant investments in multiple studies that are going to be future generating projects for NCTD. Those include real estate development studies for such as the Carlsbad Village Station, for Sprinter Station parking lots, as well as naming rights for future revenue generation. And we are also planning to make investments on studies that will improve our service. That includes microtransit, as well as market analysis and business strategy. Other necessary expenditures that bring additional funds to districts are related to discretionary grant applications. A lot of the most capital discretionary applications require project study reports in order to be advanced. So 2 of the large ones that we are planning to pursue funding for the upcoming fiscal year is related to the CP Songs double tracking project, as well as the Sprinter double track project that will allow the district to support the 15-minute headway for Sprinter service. We also have significant maintenance of way costs, and the largest one being related to the Loma Alta Creek cleanup. Within our professional services, there's also quite a bit of increase on security costs from the San Diego Sheriff's Department in order to be able to address security issues in various locations and transit centers. And security is critical. A lot of passengers, as they come back to Rider system, one of the things that they ask for is to make sure that they feel safe riding our system. So, that entails some increased security services. Then a transfer, this is really a transfer of expenses. It didn't really increase our overall operating budget, is that NCTD executed in FY21 technical supports and materials management agreement with Siemens for coaster parts. So that line item used to be under purchase transportation, which was under the rail contract. Now it's a separate contract, and it's being reflected in this year's budget as part of professional services.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, please.
Okay. Remind me what Songs is.
It's referred to as Control Point Songs. It's a part of track that's on Camp Pendleton. It's referred to as Songs because that's the handoff location between NCTD's dispatch and Metrolink's dispatch. And so that's what the project is referred to. And it's actually a relocation of the CP Songs handoff location to a new double track area that's further north.
Okay. And then on the sheriff contract, I don't remember. Do we negotiate a multi-year contract, or is it year by year?
It's an annual agreement that gets updated. And this year, one of the things we did was build in additional contingencies for some of the specialized activities that we request of the sheriff's department.
Okay. Would there be a benefit to try to negotiate a multi-year contract, or not necessarily? I know some of the cities that use the sheriff, they all get together and, they negotiate together and have a 5-year contract, but that's different for transit.
I can't speak to the city, so I can't say different, same, better, right? But we have the way that cost model breaks. I don't see how we would generate any benefits from a longer agreement versus a shorter agreement that we have.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
Okay, and also SONG stands for Santa Onofre Nuclear Generating Station. Sure.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thanks.
I'm sure that we didn't put that much thought into it.
Well, it's the location, right?
Not really.
So now recapping all the revenues and expenditures in one table. As you can see, our proposed budget for this coming fiscal year is balanced. So meaning that total revenues will equal total expenses. We are proposing a total operating budget of $144.7 million. And if you recall, within our budget policy, we are very conservative on how we estimate our revenues and how we estimate our expenditures. So we always budget for the worst case scenario. And within that scenario, we'll still be able to be balanced. The major sources for the district will come from the federal and state local grant level. And the major operating expenses will continue to be our professional services, our purchase transportation contracts, and then our salaries and wages and benefits for our employees. So what drives our costs? So in this table, you will see what are the major cost drivers for our operating budget. There are 2 columns in this table. One of them is the baseline increase, and another one is a one-time expense. A baseline increase means that it is an increase that is anticipated to continue in the upcoming fiscal years. And as you can see, the major drivers of those costs are going to be fuel, insurance, positive train controls, and all the contractual adjustments that we make on our bus operations contract, which is adjusted by the Consumer Price Index as well as their collective bargaining agreements. The one-time expenses are those expenses that only occur in a single year. And these expenses, for the most part, as you can see, are expenses that are either necessary to, for customer service, like COVID supplies, or necessary to be able to pursue additional revenue generating either grants or other sources of revenue.
So I wanted just to jump in a little bit on this because I thought this slide would help the board, the committee, understand exactly what's going on. But I just want to really speak to what we've discussed previously, that we are at a pivot point. We think it's time for us to make some investments that will generate additional revenue for the district going forward. So I do want to walk through a couple of these things just to kind of make sure there's clarity what we're trying to do. So I'll start at the bottom with the name and rights revenue contract. That is something that we have looked at, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about us issuing an RFP for a company that would come out and assess our property and then develop some revenue generating opportunities for us. Those preliminary discussions indicate that we could generate significant amount of revenues from naming rights, use of our property. One of the examples that I would give that is the convention center that's fully funded. The naming rights for that station likely would yield significant ongoing revenue to NCTD. I'll jump to the top and talk about the market analysis and business strategy. So the region is making and has made a significant amount of investments towards improving public transit. We have a lot of investments that are planned to come online in the next 5 years. one of the things that we don't have is really good a market analysis, similar to what the private sector would do to really understand what is it going to take to move more people to ride in public transportation. This is even more important now that we're in this post-COVID reality, but I would say something we should have done in the past. So we are really wanting to make an investment that's going to consider our business strategies, reach out to businesses at a really high level, residents, commuters, and really make sure that we're making really wise investments and give us some scenario planning exercises and scenarios that we could execute if we need to pivot. So that's kind of the examples. I will touch upon the real estate development ones. I know we've talked about advancing development projects at Carlsbad Village and at Poinsettia and those 6 additional Sprinter stations. So this budget funds all of the work that's really needed for us to get those out on the street and get proposals. Again, what we're trying to do is generate ancillary sources of revenue that will be sustainable to the district over the long time. And we feel like this is the time to make those investments. So I just wanted to give a little bit more detail to those things.
So moving to ridership forecast, as mentioned on the prior slide, we made some assumptions related to ridership recovery. Within this proposed budget, we are estimating an increase in ridership compared to fiscal year 2021 to be about 65% overall higher than for FY22.
I have a question on this page.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, so, or maybe a comment, but it seems to me, just looking at the numbers, that the 108%, the 772%, 748%, that's really distorting the 65%, isn't it? Because it's really, or it's distorting the 47 and the 32.
Correct.
I don't know. Can we really count on lift and flex and all that? I mean, those are huge numbers.
Well, the biggest increase will come from coastal service. Coastal is the service that got impacted the most with the shutdown. A lot of the workers were able to work remotely. All special events were closed down. People were not going to downtown San Diego. So again, with the assumption that, there's a full reopening of the economy, more people go out, special events resume, and with the restoration of service this month, as well as the increased service for October, we will expect increase in ridership. But again, these are our best estimates. But oftentimes, the ones that get impacted the most are the ones that come back the quickest, kind of what you see right now with air travel.
And Sharon, how about this? Just piggybacking on the earlier conversation, we will revise this for when we present it to the board to add the fiscal year 19 actual column. Mm-hmm. And then to the right, we will show the comparisons between the FY22 and the fiscal year 19 and 21 budgets. Because I do think that provides a little bit of clarity too.
Yeah, because if you look at the flex column here, with this huge increase, we're only talking about 30-some, 20-some thousand people. Right. It just seems like it doesn't seem logical to me.
Well, flex service also incorporates the microtransit plan for fiscal 2022.
Okay. Got it. Okay, thanks.
So the kind of recapping where our major operating revenue sources come from, grants total fund 83% of our operating budget, with federal and local grants being the largest contributors. And then from going to more detail, what are those grants? Are the TDA and TDA is the transit are both sales tax derived, And as you can see, quite a significant amount of funding from fiscal year 22 will come from the Federal CARES Act and from the federal ARPA, totaling about $48 million between both of them. And our formula FTA funds will continue to support our preventive maintenance expenses. And this graphic is the operating expenses budget total. As you can see, purchase transportation, professional services, and employee salaries make up approximately 83% of our total expenditures, with purchase transportation making close to half of that. And then this is another view of our professional services. You saw some of these within the table for the cost drivers, but it breaks down where the professional services are coming from at the division level. The largest divisions are the development services, the administrative services, IT, and the Office of the Executive Director. And without going to all the details, the right-hand table shows at a more granular level of what those major professional services are going to be for this coming fiscal year. And finally, next steps. For May 2021, we will be presenting the proposed operating budget to NCT's board. On June 1st, we'll be releasing our operating budget document along with other supplemental schedules that are part of that package. And on June 17, we will hold the public hearing, and the board will formally adopt the upcoming fiscal year operating budget and the related documents.
Do we see any of these meetings being in person or still remote?
Now you're asking hard questions. We have a lot to work through on that. So I have an upcoming meeting with the chair and vice chair to discuss that transition.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Good question, though. Go ahead, Jim.
Comment. I mean, Matt, the proposed fiscal 22 ridership forecast, do you have a plan B if we only get half of that forecast? I mean, these are quite ambitious forecasts I guess in the budget. So are we counting on this income on these forecasts of ridership? Because it just seems highly unlikely we're going to get those.
Well, from a practical financial point of view, yeah, we are prepared to be able to absorb if the ridership is less in fiscal year 2022. If the ridership remains down dramatically at these levels, fiscal year 23, 24, then that will be issues unless there are additional infusions of federal money. But my inclination is that we should be right in this ridership range of recovery, assuming that we continue to trend that we see in terms of societal openings and restoration of normal life.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think the consumer confidence, even though the light goes on, and the light switch changes on June 15th, consumer confidence is going to take longer, much like the airport's predicting 3 years. But I hope you're right. I just want to make sure that I don't know, you got some money in your back pocket, Matt, to make up. Okay, good. I'm going to hide my credit card.
I already have it, so.
Yeah, figures. Okay. All right. That's just my main concern here. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
And Matt,
go ahead, Sharon.
Go ahead. To tag along with what Jim just said, would we do like a mid-year review of the budget, quarterly review of these numbers? Where do you see us evaluating what our actuals are versus what we're projecting?
So we do a quarterly review, and so we will make sure that we agendize the quarterly review for an actual presentation. I think the first quarter is going to be the first interesting quarter, but I think when we get into the second and third quarters, that's where we're going to really have to pay some attention. But it should also be the milestone that if the board approves this budget, that we will have all of this additional market forecast information available. But we will make sure that we actually provide the public presentations on the quarterly updates of ridership progress and revenue.
Good, good. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So Matt, kind of in this same vein, are there any efforts being considered, marketing efforts on ridership and recovery? You know, something like really making a push once we open back up and make Coaster available again to get people riding it. You know, what will draw them back? Will it be a free first Monday of the month? You know, something like that, where it's a pocketbook thing, right? And I know, yes, if we give people free fares, that's money out of our pocket. But if the trains are running not full, it's not helping.
So a couple of different things. So first, Jewel, you know, we're going to be coming back to the board with some strategies in the month of May related to fares. So we're on track to make that presentation. And we do have one of our recommendations directly should support increased ridership on the Breeze and as well as the Sprinter mode. As it relates to the Coaster, we will selectively implement some targeted programs. But the big piece that I'm waiting for is for us to advance the market analysis and to have some level of recovery so that when we make that big investment, that we know that it's well targeted. So we have included robust funding in the market analysis and communication and marketing. And we're actually within this budget making adjustments within our organizational structure to really focus in on the importance of ridership development, which equates to customer revenue.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a couple questions that really, they're just basic questions that came up for me as Yoon went through the presentation, and they aren't necessarily specific to the slides on the presentation. So a question is on PTC. You know, we know PTC is a major cost going forward. And I believe that when PTC first came a couple of years ago, that there was some talk about agencies like APTA trying to work with the federal government to create some sort of permanent funding or support. Is that still an ongoing effort, or?
Yes, ma'am. So PTC was originally referred to as unfunded mandate. On the capital side of it, NCTD received significant amount of funding, and I think for the $87 million program, we had less than 3% of our local dollars in it. As it relates to operating expense, kind of just a little bit of the history in terms of an overshare. The original cost estimates that we got from the private sector ranged between $7 to $8 million per year. We were able to insource large portions of positive train control, and we're going to have it at about a $3.8 million ongoing cost. But we're also working to further reduce the cost of PTC over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. Now, to go directly to your question, yes, APTA is working on and is advancing a specific rail title that would provide specific dedicated sources of funding for commuter rail operators. I'm not sure, you know, the likelihood of that passage. It may not matter if Congress passes a robust service transportation bill that really invests significantly more, because then the pie would be the same and we would be able to have those dollars available to us. So APTA is actively working on that issue to bring in additional revenue to commuter rail operators.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my next question, again, it's really not about, it has to do with finance, but it doesn't have much to do with the presentation itself. You sent a letter to, I'm assuming each jurisdiction, requesting a letter of support to Diane Feinstein for bridge costs, bridge rebuilding costs. And I wanted to just mention that I know when I forwarded it to my staff and said, I support this, that what I got back almost right away was, well, we're sending a letter asking for support for an in-city project to Senator Feinstein. And I said, I think these are different buckets. And so staff did the research, and indeed it was confirmed that they were different buckets. But I was wondering what type of response you've had from jurisdictions as far as getting letters back, because there may be other jurisdictions that had, at first glance, have the same concern.
So we've actually had really good response. If you remember, Jewel, we have one set of, I will just call them earmarks that we submitted to Congressman Levin's office, and his office selected as one of his top 10 priorities our hydrogen fueling station project for about $1.8 million. We submitted the full package to Senator Feinstein for Bridge 257.2, which is just a double track replacement bridge project, as well as projects associated with the hydrogen bus projects and facilities. And so we got strong feedback. We sent out a late communication, but Senator Feinstein's staff had reached out directly to us asking us for our request, but we got strong support. The county, as an example, was able to get a letter into a city of Del Mar. So we got actually really good. The city of San Diego, Mayor Gloria, his office was very, very responsive. In fact, we've still gotten letters coming in today. The deadline was yesterday. We're able to add the supplemental letters, but we got really, really positive, strong support back.
Yeah, we did send a letter back, but I just didn't know if any other jurisdictions had gone through that, is this going to take away from our opportunity to get funding? So I thought it was really important that everyone understand it's different buckets.
Yep.
That's the last of my questions. Does anyone else have any more questions for Yoon or for Matt?
No, I don't.
I'm good.
Okay. Then in that case, the next scheduled meeting is May 20th, 2021 at 2 p.m. It's our regular board meeting, and I look forward to seeing you all then. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.